So the synopsis of this thing that they're up to, these humans, and I don't even know if that's the appropriate word, but whatever. Shows the first Juneteenth day ever. And it shows some of whatever they've done today on Channel 7 Eyewitness News. And then I look back to see what were they venting in Atheist? I mean, I'm at a heist. It looks like they're trying to steal New York. My entire life's been stolen. Any opportunity, any chance of whatever would have been nice to live and do. Haven't been able to do any of it. And I'm just watching it what did they waste my entire worth on? Oh, here we are.
Bookman, we began with Juneteenth celebrations nationwide. June 19th marks the day federal troops rode into Galveston, Texas to tell enslaved African Americans that they were free.
That was the state of Texas, supposedly, for Dick Cheney and George Bush. I'm standing in New York. How did that spread? And I don't, is there some kind of, union that, at Fed level that gets together and decides these things? Why is Texas coming out with, rumors that New York knows nothing about and then makes the feds sign it into law?
Parties and parades have been held all weekend long to commemorate the end of slavery. Eyewitness News reporter Shantae Lands was at one of those events in Queens.
It's been a long time coming. From singing to lyrical dance.
You know what I don't see? I don't see white Africans or gray African grays. I don't see them in any of these frames of reference on the TV of what did they do with this Juneteenth day. Just saying.
Juneteenth was celebrated by hundreds at Roy Wilkins Park in St. Albans, Queens.
It's fantastic. It's just unfortunately we have to wait this long for it to be recognized.
Juneteenth, also called Emancipation Day and Jubilee Day, celebrates the day that slaves in Galveston, Texas, were informed of their freedom 2 years later.
Now, I saw what they reference as Jubilee in London. Looks nothing like this. It's confusing on this side, however, when they reference that.
The meaning runs deep.
When you think about George Floyd and so many of our ancestors who sacrificed for me.
And now, I don't know how this guy became a Queensboro president, but that's what he's trying to say here. And he's a Democrat. Queensboro president. Again, I didn't vote. I didn't get a vote. There was no election. There was no electoral. There was no conversation. There was no council in New York with me or any of my family members hey, we have to draw up these tickets and assign it to somebody. So I don't know. I don't want to get caught up in the riptide current of fraud. I was not these people are on the TV claiming these things, but I wasn't part of it, and I wasn't asked to be a part of it. They're just happening and going on, and I have no idea how it happened. And here's some flags in the background. as reference points with, I don't know what this is. Like, they don't give out a list of symbols to my person since school, really. I mean, they taught us the 26 capitals and 26 lowercase. That was it.
To even stand here as the first black man to be borough president in the history of Queens. We've made some progress and we have a long way to go.
Politicians like Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer back passing Juneteenth as a federal holiday. The last federal holiday approved was nearly 4 decades.
Schumer's another guy. I have no idea who picked him. No idea who picked him. No idea who ticketed him. No idea what he ran on. No idea what his modus operandi is. I have no idea who feeds the man. I have no idea how his earnest living works. Again, there's such deep disparity in what they've... I'm an RH negative. Like, right there, there should be a level of opportunity and participation. I don't know where they disappeared to. It draws like a really scary conclusion based on what's coming on the TV.
Decades ago, it was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
4 decades ago was the last time they added to the calendar a holiday. 4. I'm 43 years old. So right as I arrived, they put some fake false king on the calendar within this territory. What was going on then? Because, like, there's no real history that's been taught to the children how to protect themselves since this went on the calendar of I don't even know who voted or who allowed that to happen. But let's rewind that real quick.
Approved was nearly 4 decades ago. It was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Before Juneteenth became a federal holiday, legislation passed in New York in 2020, making it a state holiday last year. Assemblymember Alicia Hyman was behind that push.
We wanted to make sure that we didn't just pass the legislation.
So now they have an assembly going on, but they're not asking Thomas Jefferson's RH negative relatives or even consulting or even bringing us into the loop or advising as to what's going on. So I'm a little confused. How does all of this work in this unity of man and things? I mean, I'm all for, like, 78. But, like, where's that window of opportunity and that pathway to success to enter the realm of reality where other RH negatives exist in Starlight and they work with some of the RH positives? I'm just curious.
We wanted to make sure that people understood Juneteenth, its significance to black people in this country.
This is also the first year that Juneteenth will be recognized by New York City. Mayor Eric Adams grew up nearby in St. Albans, Queens.
We waited far too long.
So he grew up in St. Albans, Queens, but what, they bused him to Bayside High School? Because he said he graduated Bayside High School, so that's a little confusing. Why was St. Albans being bused to Bayside? I mean, I didn't go to Bayside. That's... knew better. I walked in and there were metal detectors. I'm like, I am not that kind of kid.
Just as we waited a long time from the day 2.5 years before the message got out to Galveston, Texas, that, slavery was over.
Monday marks the start of the federal holiday, but for some, it doesn't matter because the meaning to them is still the same.
We celebrate anyway. Juneteenth for us is every day, so it feels good to finally be publicly acknowledged. But as long as we acknowledge in our heart, it doesn't even matter. We're grateful.
In St. Albans, Shantae Lands, Channel 7. Eyewitness News.
The Broadway League celebrated Juneteenth with a free outdoor concert in Times Square.
To be young, gifted, and black. To be young, gifted, and black, and own it is more than a moment.
This doesn't feel very welcoming to someone like myself. I've been here the whole time that they've been planning on doing this, and I don't know how they're misbehaving or how this even came to fruition. But it definitely does not feel welcoming to me and my children, or to me since I arrived. I mean, it very much pushed up on me, like, whoa, like, back it up when I was younger. But it doesn't feel natural. It feels very forced, and it feels really wrong.
Among the Broadway stars who made appearances at the second annual Broadway Celebrates Juneteenth concert were Miles Frost, who just last week became the youngest Tony winner for Best Leading Actor for his performance in MJ the Musical. Host James Monroe Iglehart read the Juneteenth poem We Rose by Christina Kay.
We rose to be you. We rose to be me. Above everything expected, we rose to become the knowledge we never knew.
Because it never existed until you made it up and invented it and are now propagating it, and it becomes a landlord-tenant dispute like no other.
Juneteenth Legacy Awards were presented to Leslie Uggams and Ben Vereen for their outstanding achievements on Broadway. And our Juneteenth coverage continues online. You can join me tonight as I take a look at the history of the holiday and the meaningful ways that you can celebrate. It's streaming on ABC7 NY today at 6:30, right after Eyewitness News at 6.
After a chilly start to the weekend, the weather's warmed up
So
for all the
now
dads.
I'm going to go over to the Sunday morning with Jane Pauley and how they doctored up their contribution journalistic piece. Here's Jane Pauley. This was CBS Sunday morning.
It's our newest national holiday, Juneteenth, the day which brought freedom to the last of all enslaved people in the United States. That the two coincide has deeply personal significance for our Mark Whitaker.
Juneteenth celebrations have already started this weekend in Galveston, Texas, the city where the holiday has its roots.
And again, I don't really see the North American continent being celebrated. What I see is the African continent being propagated and displayed here in North America, and now that got how that got through what? I mean, like, there's no consultation in this. Where's my hand? Am I supposed to have my hand held as a lady with a gentleman? I mean, like, there's a courting thing that went on that somebody else also skipped over, and this took some precedence. I mean, those are like big alarms that should be going off between the Rh negatives and the Rh positives in an ABO kind of way.
157 years ago today, on June 19, 1865, when Union General Gordon Granger went from the piers to downtown Galveston.
So the Narrative and Narrow-Minded Committee, using some 65th whatever, is now doing whatever this is. I mean, left out 78. I don't know if 77 or 83, if they're aware of what's on the back end of this. But 78 never got a call, never got a consultation, never got a, like, hey, here's what we're up against, here's what it looks like on the horizon.
Reading General Order Number 3, which said that all slaves are free.
Oh, wait. Did that say number 3? Oh, here we are. Again, I see the signs and the symbols. I just don't know why the human action has taken a really dangerous turn for I don't know what reason.
This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. But it didn't happen until 2 years after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. I have my own personal connection to this story. This is the gravesite of my great-grand.
I refer to this part as the Lincoln dilemma. Work was over. There were people that now had no work. People are going to be frightened of people with no work if you have a farm and a family, and it's really hard to like flag down help. So now, again, I've never met anyone in my life who said, you know what? I think rather than using the resources and tools that we have closest to us and making sure that they have adequate work and education and resources, you know what? Let's go out and ship total strangers from faraway lands and then let them compete for the same dwindling opportunity in this land. I mean, like, the logic behind the story they're trying to peddle as to how they got here doesn't even work. And then I'm looking at modern day, and I'm like, they're trying to get over here over fences. They just want law. And, I mean, like, they're coming over on dinghies and also trying to swim. I mean, like, I'm not buying the narrative that somebody shipped you here nicely. It's just not working for me.
Grandfather, Frank Whitaker, who was born enslaved in Texas in 1853. My great-grandfather was 11 when he was freed on Juneteenth. Frank Whitaker is buried alongside his wife Della and one of his daughters, Julia, who died when she was just 1 year old. The tombstones are in a tiny, well-kept all-black cemetery down a dirt road just outside the town of Jewett, about halfway between Houston and Dallas. How are you?
I'm okay.
And there's that word Jew again, Jew. I just want to make sure the New York Jews know with the Auschwitz story, or Auschwitz story. This is what the Jew in Texas looks like, just so you don't get religious connotation confused when you go to bat for something or someone, or to defend yourself. This is what Texas looks like. I don't know, again, but then they go to like something called a Baptist, some go to a Presbyterian. Oh, I think the Presbyterians in New York are Korean normally. They usually have this weird language next to the English alphabet as of late in the current area. So again, like, this is getting really tricky with, where's the help? I mean, I heard there's a National Guard, but then when they send people, it looks like somebody else's nation. So I'm like, where do they keep the RH negative National Guard? Like, who are they? How do I reach those folks?
See you. An hour away in Waco, I met my second cousin, Bernice Bryant, for the first time. It's only recently that I've become aware of, this part of the family.
We too.
So we're discovering each other after all this time. Frank Whitaker was also Bryant's great-grandfather, and she actually met him as a child when he was in his 80s and had lost his sight. Do you know Frank Whitaker?
I've seen him one time. He was blind.
Okay.
And he got very upset because he went to crying.
He cried.
because he was blind and he couldn't see us.
I sat down with Bernice, her daughter Angela Tyler, and Tyler's son John Bible. For earlier generations.
You know what else I've seen? I've seen that they've had this really large, loud, proud, and strong ancestry program going on. I myself had some kind of weird whatever. When it first came out, they called me on the phone to go on to Ancestry.com. I had to have like a special phone call. And then I went, and then I had to speak them through what I was viewing on the screen because I had no access to any of my family members. And I was told that there were people elsewhere that had written to specifically connect, but it never happened. There was never on my end, on my screen, it never went through to who I was related to, or who Alexander was related to, or any of my children at this point. And that's really confusing how other people are able to do this like library thing. They have I heard when I went down to Maryland, they have a TV show that's now going on with some guy who's doing it for people. And I'm like, why is it so difficult just to get on Ancestry.com and do the same search in a freebie kind of a way if everybody else had that opportunity? I'm missing something here. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.